Hello, Internet. Mike Erre, Andy Lara. We're here for podcast number 4 for all you Voxers that are out there and
throwing punches about things we say.
Oh my goodness,
Voxers. I like
that. The Voxers. That's right. Voxers are Voxy, as they appear to others. The Andy's wearing his Anaheim Ducks hat today. So how are the Ducks doing?
I'm wearing.
Oh, I don't care. All right. Ohio State still undefeated. I might as well just I might as well no longer say that and just assume it for the rest of the football season.
That's working for me on the other end of things. I just don't even want to talk about it until they win. It's
yeah. And there was some discussion on social media this week whether or not Adele would like the Ducks, and the clear answer is yes, because she clearly likes losers. Hence, all of her songs about breaking up. And my sweet little girl, she's 10. She said, I really don't like Adele's new song. She just sounds kind of squeaky. I said, that's perfect.
Squeaky.
That's right. Hello from the other side.
I'm gonna affirm your comment because I think that just makes her that much more like Jesus. If she loves the losers, then hey, man. Let's.
Oh boy,
I'll back it.
Well, I can't argue with that. I got a question about finding nightfall stuff.
Okay.
And I wanted to respond. Somebody tweeted like, "Hey, I couldn't find any Nightfall stuff," and I wanted to reply by saying it's in the Devil's Workshop. That secular screaming music, but where is it actually? So Nightfall, where would you find Nightfall?
Okay, so this is I'd have to put it up actually because it's so long ago. It was like 2004. It's almost 9 years ago.
Oh, God.
Or what's
9 years? What's 9 years?
What's 9 years with the internet?
Right.
If you were to search it now, you actually will probably find more stuff from like this European metal band called Nightfall.
What?
There's a lot of duplicate band names out there.
Did you steal their name?
We did not. It was far after that we learned that they were actually a pretty popular band in Europe. Nice. They don't do a lot in the US. Anyhow, I'd have to. I'll do you guys a little bit of a treat, and I'll get some stuff up and a link on the blog for this episode.
There was somebody who actually asked.
Yeah. If you enjoy early 2000s emo screamo hardcore bands, and I think you'd dig it for sure.
Yes,
all
and
right.
Satan rejoices as well. So that's big. So again, I'm Mike. We're here with Andy. I am the biggest sinner in the room and the world's worst sinner, as we talked about last week. And there was a lot of agreement about that. Just publicly, a lot of agreement that I am the world's worst sinner. And so that was helpful.
Affirming.
Affirmation. So, we get so much good feedback and so many good questions. So here's one that is not an LGBTQ kind of conversation that I'd love to do a future podcast on. She writes, here's how she signs her email. So how great is this? Mm-hmm. Fighting the patriarchy while loving Christ and listening to Pearl Jam. Now that may be the greatest sign off ever. So she says, I'm a feminist. Yeah. Why does the modern church hate/fear me? That's the short version. The long one is this. I feel that as a feminist, I don't fit into the modern church. I've been laughed at when I identified myself as a feminist. I've been told that feminism is breaking the foundation of the modern family. I've been told that feminism has no place in marriage. The reason this bothers me is that I've been made to feel that following God's word and believing that as a woman I have rights and choices are incompatible. I've defended my feminist beliefs and can do that well, except in a church setting, because they just quote passages about submission. I've tried to explain that feminism to me is about choice, how far in school you want to go, being able to choose when and who you marry if and when you have children, if you go to work or stay home with those children. There are still places in the world where girls and women do not have these choices. I was wondering if you could recommend any pastors, teachers who write about this topic. Also, the irony of asking a man for help regarding feminism isn't lost on me. I just respect your opinion. So I do think there's some really good authors that you should consider on this. One is named Jesus, and the other is named the Apostle Paul. So Jesus, and part of it depends on the definition of the word feminist. I've heard it used in a number of different ways. I've heard it used to describe a kind of agenda that goes beyond equality. that it aims to eliminate any gender differentiation whatsoever. I'm not a feminist in that respect, nor would Jesus be. I've heard feminism used to describe a man-hating kind of philosophy or reaction against patriarchy. I don't think that's quite where Jesus would be. But if feminism, in the way that you define it, means access, equality of identity, worth, significance, and value, the transcending cultural norms into full opportunity in the kingdom of God and into the world, then, oh my goodness, Jesus would be the first feminist. I mean, in that sense, absolutely. And we can, someday, we will go into this, young lady, because Jesus, as we've been talking about, was so stinking radical. But one of the ways he was radical is he allowed women disciples. And Luke 8 talks about women that would follow him around and even support him. You have this very famous episode about Mary and Martha, where Jesus is eating at their home, and Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus, which was a common rabbinical way to describe the posture of a disciple listening to a rabbi or a teacher. You have the women, of course, being the first ones to find Jesus was resurrected and being commissioned to announce to the male disciples. Then you have in Paul's thought, and Paul gets a really bad rap here, no one in the first century would have been surprised by the statement, wives, submit to your husbands. That was assumed. That was the cultural narrative. What would have been unbelievably surprising, and one of the reasons why more women followed Jesus than men in the first couple of centuries, is the fact that husbands in Paul's letter to the Ephesians were given much more instruction about loving their wives, giving themselves up for her, loving her as a husband would love his own body. All of that was revolutionary for the day, let alone in Galatians, where Paul writes, in Christ there's neither male nor female, Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. So you have in both Jesus and in Paul's ministry, and Paul identifies a woman apostle, several deaconesses. He calls many women partners in the gospel. So what you have is contrary to the cultural narrative of the day. You have these seeds of revolution that would have borne and still bear incredible fruit. Now, there is a big biblical debate about the role of women in the church. We're going to address that. But if you want advocates for your view, study Paul and Jesus and pay very close attention to Jesus's practice in Luke, particularly of having women at key points in his ministry. And it would not have been lost on the original audience. And Paul too. Paul gets a bad rap. But his letter to Ephesians, before he says anything about wives and husbands, he introduces a whole topic by saying, hey, as Christians, let us submit to one another. And then he gives an example of wives to husbands, husbands to wives, children to fathers, fathers to children, masters to slaves, slaves to masters. He's talking about all of the ways the gospel rearranges these embedded narratives. So there you go. That's a great question.
That's a great question. I read that. I was wondering if we were going to address that.
See, now I don't tell Andy anymore what we're going to talk about. So the first couple of podcasts, he had a run sheet, and we just didn't pay any attention to that. And by we, I mean me. And so now I don't even tell him, because I want his honest reaction, whether it's more from the Nightfall part of his personality, the screaming, or the Dakota part of his personality, which is kind of dreamy, kind of soft.
Okay.
Kind of Adele.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Love this. Loving the podcast. This topic that we've been talking about is especially timely for me personally, as my brother-in-law just came out to my wife's family. And all of a sudden, this issue is so much more real for me. I think a lot of people listening and commenting are trying to figure out, when does truth come into the conversation? Mm-hmm. So we've been talking about how Jesus, as a beautiful and intrusive and gracious presence into the world, and I mean intrusive in the best sense, he's disruptive, he disrupts the status quo, that Jesus would challenge both affirming and non-affirming parts of this conversation, that Jesus would challenge every position of every issue, because we all fall short. And so we've been spending a lot of time, almost exclusively, on the non-affirming, what Jesus would say to those who do not affirm either the legitimacy or morality or the blessing of LGBTQ relationships, outworking of behavior, whatever. And so when Jesus, it speaks of Jesus in the book of John as someone full of grace and truth. And that has become a shorthand way of talking about grace. We misunderstand grace, but grace to the modern conception is, okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. And truth means that I love someone enough to tell them that's not okay. That's not okay. That's not okay. Right. And if you define grace and truth in those ways, well, then clearly they're in tension. And I think the questioner represents a very popular understanding of this issue. If I'm loving them and not judging them, and I'm seeing myself as a world's worst sinner, and my sin is a 2x4 and their sin is a speck, doesn't love also require that I have to tell them they're wrong and that their behavior is destructive? And doesn't love also require that I intervene in some way, shape, or form? Mm-hmm. And so I want to spend some time answering that question because I think it's a very good question. I'm going to answer it a bit obscurely by beating up on a phrase I've heard a lot in LGBTQ conversations, which is love the sinner, hate the sin.
Yeah.
And I've heard that as kind of a heart posture towards people that tries to bring together this idea of grace, accepting people where they are, and truth, letting them know that what they're doing is wrong. And so a shorthand way of combining grace and truth to this mind, or to many minds, is the idea of well, I'm going to love the sinner, but I'm going to hate the sin. Mm-hmm. And practically that works itself out in saying, yep, I'm going to love you, accept you, but I'm also going to tell you what you're doing is wrong. And certainly there has to be a place for this, right? I mean, if my son is a drug addict, if a dear friend of mine is an alcoholic, there are times for interventions. There's no question about it. But we really want to spend time on why it is that we rush so quickly to that. It's almost as if the greatest fear of the non-affirming crowd is to be seen as condoning sin, instead of the greatest fear of the non-affirming crowd being seen as unloving. Right? So we'd rather be seen as unloving than get the rap that we're condoning sin. And the whole table fellowship idea is that it seems like Jesus was okay getting the rap of condoning sin for the sake of loving other people. So let's explore this, Andy. Is that all right? Is that a good topic?
Yeah, that's all right. Like, can I preempt just a thought I'm having, not asking a question, but
yes,
kind of maybe where I think some of this comes from. When I look at a lot of the transformations in the Bible of people then converting, so much of it seems to rally around some instantaneous conversion in which truth is revealed and then therefore people are saved.
Right.
I don't think often we see something in process. And so maybe, I don't know if maybe that's what's kind of dictating more of our regular understanding of thinking.
That's
like,
a great point.
If I get to truth, then that's going to be the moment of conversion for that person, without really resting in the patience of relationship that gets us there. And it's not necessarily instantaneous.
Well, look at, first of all, that's exactly right, because you look at Paul's conversion, right? He was known as Saul. He was persecuting the church. He was killing Christians. He has a moment where Jesus dumps him on his fanny, off his donkey, and hey, you are persecuting me, and that's the truth. And so Saul repents. He and then he reflects on the great grace shown to him. But then you have somebody like Peter. When did Peter become a true disciple of Jesus? Well, Peter, it's so funny when you read the Gospels, Peter's a mess.
Yeah.
You know, it goes from Peter being one of the first ones to recognize who Jesus is and his authority, to Peter being rebuked as an agent of Satan and opposing the crucifixion, to Peter denying Jesus 3 times, to being one of the rocks on which the church is built. I mean, you have this incredible and beautiful narrative. And I don't relate to Paul at all in his conversion story. I relate to Peter. My wife relates to Paul. There was a moment for her when a speaker said to her, "You will never be good enough. That's why you need Jesus." Those words, after my wife's years of performing for God and trying to get God to love her, those words pierced her soul and brought her to a joyful acceptance of Jesus. And so both are true. But loving the sinner, hate the sin, I think is also embraced because there I think is a perception that is somewhat grounded in reality, perhaps, that homosexual behavior is now being pushed not just to be tolerated, but to be approved and celebrated. And if you don't approve and celebrate of it, you're hateful, you're homophobic. Our kids have to learn about it in school, blah, 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 blah. So the non-affirming crowd is thinking, listen, there's such cultural pressure to accept this. We have to maintain our distinctiveness by saying we don't. Mm-hmm. And I think those are very, very good questions. The issue is, if you're not going to approve, how do you not approve? And when and how and where and why do you make that disapproval known? Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to hold it. It's the non-affirming crowd. The way Jesus would, I think, address the non-affirming crowd is the way in which they hold their non-affirming position.
Yeah.
Right? So it's full of hypocrisy, judgment, self-righteousness, blah, blah, blah. So I think this topic, the hating sin but loving the sinner, gets us into a lot of this goopy stuff. And per usual, we won't edit anything or re-record anything, but we'd love your feedback as always.
Please.
So I want to beat up a little bit on this, Andy.
Okay.
And see what you think.
All right, I'm about to witness a murder.
Well, no, just a beating. Okay. Just a beating of this statement.
All right.
Because what we've been talking about is that Jesus fronted love, as a friend of mine says it. Without qualification, without footnotes, he fronted love. And the kindness of God leads people to repentance. And there are moments, of course, where you do get that instantaneous revelation of truth. Yes, I'm a sinner. Yes, I'm fallen. Yes, I need saving. But in a topic like this, where it's been so politicized and it's so entrenched and there's so much distrust, hatred, animosity on both sides, is that the primary way it's going to work? Is that the ordinary way it's going to work? So let me beat up on this, Andy.
Okay.
All right?
I'm watching.
Beating up point number 1. Love the sinner, hate the sin. I've only heard almost exclusively in terms of LGBTQ conversations. I've never heard anyone say, I love Mike Erre, but I hate that he's chunky. I hate his obesity. I love Mike Erre, but I hate that he's condescending sometimes. I love Mike Erre, but I absolutely hate the way he eats pumpkin pie, or whatever silly or serious thing there is. So it's almost exclusively used in conversations about sexuality. So there again, we bump into the double standard, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it I've had friends who've had some pretty strong family difficulties around alcoholism, around drug addiction, around that kind of thing. And
okay,
I've heard
and
it thrown around. Yeah, and I've heard it thrown around in that same conversation personally.
Well, then beating up point number 1 loses its sting if it's applied consistently. My beating point up number 1 was I've heard it, and even if it's true, it's applied inconsistently.
Yes.
And you're saying, no, I've heard it used in other places. Great.
Yeah.
I've only heard it used when in reference to sexuality conversations.
Yeah. I've definitely heard it used a lot in those kinds of conversations. So if someone takes that general posture towards themselves and everybody, okay, beating up point number 1 loses its force. Sure.
But I have more points, Andy.
Great.
Okay, number 2.
Okay.
This posture is very, very confusing to people because it's tough to differentiate what I do from who I am. So if someone said to me, hey, Mike, I love you, but I hate your heterosexuality, I'd go, that's tough.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what to do with that statement. So for those that are same-sex attracted who have never chosen those feelings to say we love you but hate your sin, I mean that's a pretty confusing statement.
Oh yeah.
Because if I say to my wife, "Hey, I love you but I hate your cooking." Hey, I love you but I hate the way you complain all the time. Hey, I love you but I hate that you're a nag. I mean, whatever. Are any of those conversations going to communicate love?
No.
No
way.
Because no one's going to hear the love part, and that's me. So should we be surprised that this statement hasn't exactly felt loving to people? Right? I love you, but I need to let you know there's a part of you I don't love. Okay, Go. What were you gonna say?
I would say, I mean, it's such insider mentality and club mentality, though.
Totally.
You know, it's solely a way to like affirm another Christian for like standing on like I just don't know how to embrace my so and so relative who's homosexual, and a friend saying to them like, "Hey, man, you know, hate the sin, love the sinner." It's like it validates the fact that like you don't know how to deal with the situation, but I'm going to validate your tension with their sin.
Right.
But it's like that comment does not work. Trying to discuss it with those outside of that conversation.
Oh my goodness, no.
Makes no sense.
And that's beating up point number 3. The fruit of that. Who's been won over by that?
Yeah.
Is that and do you ever hear it from Jesus? Do you ever hear? I threw out that we were talking about this today, and someone quoted Romans 12. Love must be sincere, hate what is evil. Mm-hmm. Right? Do what is good. So and I'm like, great. Tell me anywhere where Jesus says to view people that way. I'm all about actions. Remember the good kind of Crino from last week?
Right.
I can say, yes, there are actions that are not beneficial. There are actions that are not congruent with the kingdom. But the shorthand of love the sinner, hate the sin does not feel loving. It kills relationships. And it's not Jesus said even remotely. Let me ask you, Andy. Let's compare 2 statements.
Okay.
All right? Tell me. Which one is of Jesus?
All right.
Love the sinner, hate the sin is statement number 1. Okay? Statement number 2 is this. But to you who are listening, I say love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting anything back. Then your reward will be great. You will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Now, which one sounds like love this? Which one sounds like Jesus, first of all? Statement 1 or statement 2?
I feel like this is an ambush, but
that's right.
I think I'm going to go with number 2.
Yes, that's number 2. Number 2 is Jesus. As far as I know, love the sin, hate the sinner. No. Whoops. Love the sinner, hate the sin goes back to Augustine, according to my crack internet research team, namely Google.
Yeah.
And I don't. So the posture Jesus gives is love without qualification. There's no but. There's no and. There's love your enemy and love your neighbor as you love yourself. How do I love myself? Well, I love myself knowing that there's all sorts of jacked up stuff, right? I can tell. I mean, I'm the biggest sinner in this room right now and on the internet, quite frankly. Yeah. And yet, I somehow am able to live in the tension of accepting who I am, recognizing I'm in process, knowing that Jesus is forming me and shaping me by His grace, His word, His truth, and recognizing the truth that there's still some jacked up stuff going on in me. So what do you think of that point? Okay. You're still not convinced?
I mean, I'm absolutely convinced. I think.
So the objection is, yeah, but didn't Jesus hate sin? Doesn't He hate sin? And that, go ahead.
Is that, I think, are we going to run into a language problem with this? I mean, because it's like when we look at, because He also says, like, you know, you cannot know me if you don't hate your mother, hate your father, hate your brother. Right. You know, and it's like, if we tie in those 2 terminology, well, what do we look at? How do we look at that? What does hate mean? What does hate actually mean when we're talking about that? And that is that.
Yep. And it's so funny because, and this is the crazy part. Yes, Jesus is opposed to sin, but you know whose sin He's opposed to? Yours! Your sin! That's the stuff He wants to deal with first. You're the biggest sinner in the room. Come on! This whole thing, love the sinner, hate the sin. I think Jesus reframes it into the popular counter slogan, love the sinner and hate your own sin.
Yeah.
Right? Because if my sin is the 2x4 and their sin is the speck, then what's that say?
Yeah.
Love the sinner means, okay, hate the sin means I'm going to hate the 2x4 before I hate the speck, right?
Yeah.
So what Jesus does, I mean, even the woman who gets caught in adultery,
Yeah.
So this is the big objection.
Right.
So a woman gets caught in the very act of adultery. In the very act. This is in John 8. And the religious leaders bring her before Jesus. Because if Jesus is going to defy the Torah and not call for her either public condemnation or stoning, okay, which was the regulation under the law was to put her to death. If he defied that regulation, then the Pharisees had room to accuse him. If he pursued that regulation and put her to death, well, then he loses his appeal to the crowds, right? So they trap him completely. And Jesus is beautiful. Jesus, it says he just begins to write in the dust, and so much speculation about what he's writing.
Yeah.
And there's a passage in Jeremiah that talks about Messiah will come and write the sins of the world into dust. I'm totally paraphrasing that. So something, maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Jesus very famously says, okay, well, whoever's sinless, go ahead and throw.
Yeah.
So instead of making her sin the issue, he makes their sin the issue.
Yeah.
And so from oldest to youngest, it says, because us old folks, Andy, you're a young buck. Us old guys, we know how much of a sinner we are because we have more time to do it.
Yeah.
And then Jesus looks at her and says, oh, no one condemns you? Neither do I. Go and live your life of sin. No, go and leave your life of sin. And people will say, see, he told her, sin no more. Showed her grace, but then right away, sin no more. Right. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
Right.
Well, I want you to notice what Jesus does first. Right? First, he confronts the self-righteous judges. And then he, and only he, after he fronts grace, says, go and leave your life of sin.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Did she need to be told she was a sinner? Did she need to be convinced of that?
Yeah, didn't need to.
Nope, didn't need to. Not even remotely. She knew it. She was caught. Interesting that they didn't bring the guy who she was having adultery with, right? Back to patriarchy and Pearl Jam. Fascinating that there's no dude there.
Yeah.
It's just a woman.
Right.
But what's Jesus do? See, we just think, well, we've got to rush through the grace to get to the point where we say, don't sin anymore.
Yeah.
And certainly, I'm not advocating even remotely hey, we never speak out against sin. No. But whose sin does Jesus confront first? Well, it's back to last week. He confronts ours. So love the sinner, hate the sin is better formulated. Love the sinner, hate my own sin. Yeah. And then if it's appropriate for me to deal with a speck in someone else's eye, I'm doing it as a fellow sinner. I'm not doing it from a position of superiority. I'm not doing it from a position of judgment. I'm doing it as a fellow struggler. Now, that doesn't mean it'll be received well, but it means it's a far different conversation than just lobbing this statement, love the sinner, hate the sin, around, thinking that actually describes the posture of heart that Jesus is wanting from his followers.
Yeah.
It's because love but hate the sin feels like I'll love you if you change. I'll love you if you get better. And I think for folks who need to understand the way that Jesus loved me, it was I love you and all of you. And that love is transformative. That love won't let you stay the same way, but it's love that leads the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think what Jesus is doing is inviting us to a different sort of posture. Now, I'm going to tread here, Andy, into some stuff that loads of people are going to disagree with.
All right.
Like,
I'm looking forward to it.
That hasn't happened before. Here, this is my personal experience, and I believe it's what Paul and Jesus are getting at. That if I have to bring disapproval in early to the conversation, what will happen if the relationship is going to be maintained? That part of their life will be minimized or hidden. So if I go, and we talked about pornography, so if I go to my accountability partners and I say, listen, man, I totally blew it. that's a poor way to say it. I totally messed up is wrong, screwed up is wrong. I totally sinned in this regard. All right, how about that?
Yeah.
And they look at me and they say, "Man, we love you, we're committed to you, but we just hate pornography. We hate the pornography in you." There is a pretty good shot that next time that happens, I'm not going to bring it fully.
to what benefit is it for you?
Right.
Yeah.
I know it's
for
sin.
them to be just like, once you know how much I hate that.
Right.
Hey, I love you.
Right.
You heard me say that now, so I love you.
Right.
But hey, I hate that. So, just next time,
Right.
just, I don't know, don't do it.
Exactly. So what's it do? It just pushes it into hiding.
Yeah.
And what you have is a particularly gay young people in churches. They know the church so strongly disapproves. It's just hidden. Yeah. And so instead, what I think is, and I've had this happen, man. I've had conversations with people who have confessed incredible things. They know that they're sin, but they do that after you front love. Mm-hmm. So we had a young lady who was a friend of ours we've known for a long time, who pulled us aside one night and said, "Listen, I've had an affair with a pastor's wife for years." Okay? Wow. And the pastor's wife has 3 kids, and I think she'd said it was like 6 years or something. And so my wife and I just say, "Okay, well, tell us about that." And so she begins to unpack it. Now, we don't say anything. At the end of the conversation, we just say, "Hey, we're committed to you. We are absolutely and fundamentally committed to you." Mm-hmm. And so I want to pray right now for God's blessing on you. Mm-hmm. And so we just prayed for her.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah.
3 or 4 days later, we get a Facebook message that says, "Hey, I'd really love to know what you guys think about this." So we take her out to dinner, my wife and I, and we just ask, "Well, what's your story?" And it turns out there's abuse from religious authority figures. I mean, just awful, awful stuff. And I'm not saying every gay person out there is acting out because of abuse in their background. I'm not saying that at all. Mm-hmm. But in this case, we actually got to one of the core issues because we fronted love. We surprised with grace.
Yeah.
Right? She didn't have to be told that she was wrong to have an affair with a pastor's wife. She knew it. Yeah. She was watching to see what we would do with that information. Yeah. Were we going to slam her, judge her? Do I think that was wrong? I think that was wrong. Absolutely, I think that was wrong.
Right.
Of course, I think that was wrong. Mm-hmm. But she knew it already. Mm-hmm. And what enabled us to get to one of the core issues in that moment wasn't, "Hey, we're going to love you, but we hate this."
Yeah.
We just didn't say that. Yeah. We just said, "We're for you. Yeah. And we want you to deal with whatever is prompting this," right? Mm-hmm. And that opened up incredible conversation. Yeah. And I don't know if this person is loving Jesus or not loving Jesus or whatever. I just know that we, if love is transformative, I believe it is, and grace is transformative, it's precisely because it calls us out of hiding. Yeah. And what calls us out of hiding is the absolute precondition that we're loved and accepted already.
Yeah.
I'm yelling in my little home office. I'm getting fired up.
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
Are you feeling it? Are you smelling what I'm cooking?
I am.
In a metaphorical sense?
I am, and I'm coming over for dinner.
All right, here's last big point.
All right.
Last beat up point.
Okay.
I think love, the sinner hate the sin, misunderstands the nature of love.
Yep.
Ooh.
Okay. All right.
Now, love, is a really horribly abused word.
Oh, yeah.
Because it can describe my love of ice cream, my love of Pearl Jam, my love of Ohio State, my love of my wife, my love of Jesus, Jesus' love of me. It can describe anything from the pedantic and the sophomoric to the exalted and the beautiful, right? It almost means nothing.
Yeah.
For a lot of folks, it means just simple acceptance. Mm-hmm. So love means I accept you no matter what you do, and I approve of everything you do. Well, we're going to beat up on that view, but we're also going to beat up on the view that says love means I have to tell them the truth about themselves and their behavior.
Yeah.
So there may be a place for that, but it's only after certain things are true.
Yeah.
All right. So the way we start defining love is we start with what God is like, because God is love. And this is how we know what love is, that Jesus Christ laid down his life for us.
Right.
Okay, so love is an action word.
Yes.
It's not an affection word. Because you can act lovingly towards someone that you don't love in terms of your affection. So in the Bible, love is an action word.
Yeah.
Now and because there are different words for love, there are different words that have different slants on that. A friendship love, a brotherly or sisterly love, an erotic love, totally. But love, like faith, is an action word in the Bible. It's a verb. And so how does God love us? And if any of you were at EV Free when I gave a teaching on this has totally shaped my thinking. It's from Scott McKnight. Scott, with one T, McKnight wrote a book called A Fellowship of Different, not difference, but different with an S.
Do you want me to put a link on the post?
Oh yes,
for it? Okay.
It's so good.
We'll do that.
It's so good. But he does this great thing, and it's the best I've read at a popular level about what love is. He says, love, if you look at how God loves us, love is a rugged commitment, first and foremost. It's a rugged commitment. And the Bible's word for that is covenant. It is God's promise by his own nature and self. It's not his promise if, it's his promise that. Right? It's a covenant. It's binding. It's not breakable. It's not a contractual sort of thing. Love is a rugged commitment. And you see this all throughout the covenants that are made in the scriptures, particularly the large ones that God just simply says, like to a guy like Abram, I will bless you and make your name great. Or to David, one of your descendants will sit on the throne of Jacob forever. Or the new covenant in Jesus. His body was broken, his blood was shed, inaugurating a new covenant for us. So, first of all, love is a rugged commitment. It's an action word. It's also a rugged commitment to be with somebody. It's a rugged commitment to somebody, but it's also a rugged commitment to be with them. The great covenant promise of God to God's people all throughout the Bible, at every step of the way, is I will be with you. I will be with you. I will be your God. You will be my people. And he says that all over the place. So, in Exodus, I will be with you. I will lead you out of Egypt. I will conquer the Red Sea. I will lead you into the wilderness. I will be with you in the promised land. Joshua, don't be afraid. I will be with you. Right? What's Jesus say at the very end of Matthew? I will be with you to the very end of the age. God's witness is one of his promises. So love is a rugged commitment to somebody that no matter what they're doing and what they're like, you are committed to them. Secondly, this is my wife calling on the phone. Hi, Justy. You're on the podcast right now.
Oh.
Say
well,
hi. Say hi, Internet.
Hi, Internet. How are you?
So Andy and I are just recording.
All right. Well, I love you. I'm going to let you go then.
Okay.
Bye now.
I love you.
Love you too.
That's how raw this is. That's
right.
Mrs. Erie checking in right there. Wondering what her husband does at home all day. Looks at Andy.
Yells at the top of his lungs at Andy at 5 feet away.
Yes, sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please.
So love is a rugged commitment to another. Love is a rugged commitment to be with another. And then he says, number 3, love is a rugged commitment to be for another. You're an advocate for them. You're on their side. You're for them. And the other person knows you're for them. You're committed to them. You're committed to be with them. You're committed for them. So, of course, Jesus is our advocate. The Spirit is our advocate. There's a sense that God is for us in our flourishing. And then the last one is it's a rugged commitment towards something. Love is a rugged commitment towards something. There's a telos, a goal of love. Now, in the case of God's love, it's to Christ-likeness. It's not just I'm lovable because I'm me and I'm the apple of his eye and I'm special. Yeah. But the love is purposeful. It has a point to it. The love, the New Testament is really, really clear. It's to Christ-likeness, to being more and more like Christ, right? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience. So love is a telos. So when I love my kids, if I'm doing it well, they know I'm committed to them no matter what they do. I tell them this: you could go to jail, you could steal a car. I will love you no matter what. There is nothing you could do to take away my love.
Yeah.
I'm committed to be with them. I love being with them. I'm with them when they're good days. I'm with them on their bad days. I've just started when my son has a rough day and he's entering teenage years and hormones are starting to kick in and he's upset. And I just go up and he's in his room and he's kind of like, mercurially sort of stewing on stuff. I just go up and sit in his room with him. I don't talk. I just sit there and I'm just with him. And I found that after 20 minutes or so, we can then kind of work into whatever the issues. But I'm committed to being with him. He knows I'm for him. Mm-hmm. He knows it to the depths of his being that I'm for him.
But presence and association means something.
Oh, boom! Look at Andy Lara. Wow. That's right, because the presence and the association run the risk of people saying, "Oh, well, you're just condoning their behavior."
Right.
But here's the point, all right? Here is the punchline. Love is a rugged commitment to be with somebody, to be committed to them, to be for them, right? And but it's also a rugged commitment to love them towards something. So with my kids, I love them towards maturity, towards independence, towards being good citizens and loving Jesus. And there's only so much of that I can control, right? I mean, ultimately, right. I do my love and they do what they do. But here's the point, McKnight mates, and this is the one that changed everything for me. The only time love towards something feels like love is when the other three loves are felt first. So the reason I can say to my children, hey, let's not do that anymore. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's wise. I think it's wrong. However I say that, the reason I can do that and it still feels like love is because they know I'm committed to them, I'm with them, and I'm for them. Now, what we do in the LGBT community often is we reverse that. I'm going to love you towards heterosexuality. I'm going to love you so you don't sin anymore. I'm going to love you so that. And it feels like coercion. It feels like love with an agenda. It feels like I'm loving you just as an entrance into seeing your repentance.
Yeah.
But if you're actually committed to them, regardless of what they do, and you're committed to be with them, regardless of what they do, and you're committed to be for them, regardless of what they do, then they might be interested in what you're loving them towards.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, that was that conversation with that young lady, right? We'd had history with her. We didn't react. We just went, we're for you. Mm-hmm. And not that we figured it out. I mean, I am the chief of sinners. I'm a mess on some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But the reason love the sinner, hate the sin falls short of the biblical command to love is it rushes to the last part without thoroughly doing the first three first. Yeah. And if you just lead with, well, I just need you to know I totally disapprove of what you're doing, but I'm committed to you.
Yeah.
It never feels like love. It feels like manipulation, coercion. It feels like agenda. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Here's what I found, and people are going to howl at me because this offends both sides, as Jesus should, right? On the one hand, people that say love just means accepting you no matter what you're doing, mm-hmm. And approve of everything you're doing. No, love does not mean that. Love does not mean I approve of everything you're doing.
Right?
It doesn't. No. God doesn't approve of everything I'm doing. To suggest otherwise is to misrepresent the Bible. We're not talking about a lukewarm tolerance here.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So yes, love has opinions. My wife loves me as an expression of that love. She hides the Halloween candy because she knows I need to be loved towards skinniness.
That's the character of kindness in the breakdown of love. That is very kind to you.
Exactly. She's loving me towards skinniness, and I need to be loved that direction. Mm-hmm. But I'm not offended by that because she has demonstrated through 15 years that she loves me no matter how my body looks. Yeah. She's shown that.
Yeah.
And so I can receive her correction as love. Same thing with our Father in heaven, right? That's exactly how Jesus works with us. So go for it.
Is this somewhat, I don't want this to boil down too much or be overly simplified, but that type of corrective love to me, and you said this even in the second podcast, instantaneously makes more sense in a parenting relationship.
Yep.
You bring the child into this world. I raised you. I've been with you for 13 years.
Right.
It's just like, you are my child. And so it's like all the other, if we call them steps of love, have kind of been presupposed by this point.
Absolutely.
And now, I mean, applying them in immediate context, like you go up to his room, you're with him, you're demonstrating that on a regular basis, and then it allows the immediate conversation to take place. But on an ongoing basis, we can almost assume that kind of love makes more sense in a parenting relationship anyways. So when you try to bring that friend to friend, one-to-one with a person, it seems so out of context, because you're not above this person. You're not parent to that person. I mean, you're
that's why you never lead with it.
It's if we look at it that way, it doesn't even fit. Doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't fit. Now, I think there is a couple exceptions to this. First of all, if someone is in immediate danger of doing self-harm or harm to others, man, we don't care if they're feeling our love or not. We act.
Right.
I think the other thing is when you are with a group of people, a community of people who are on the inside of your life, we engage in the good Crino we talked about. So I've got people in my life who hold me to being honest about pornography and how I've done with guarding my eyes, guarding my heart. And I think that I've given them almost permission to love me towards something, right?
Yeah.
Now, even if I didn't give them permission, as someone who claims to follow Jesus, as someone who loves Jesus, if this were an egregious outworking of sin, I mean, yes, in the community, it has to be addressed. Paul's really clear about this, that there are times there is something so damaging to the community, it has to be addressed. No question about it. But how do you address it? Well, what I'm just saying is Jesus is really clear. First, go to the person by yourself. Bring another if that person doesn't respond. Realize that you go to talk to somebody in the midst of your own sin and brokenness. So you do it gently. You do it without superiority. You do it without judgment. You do it as a fellow sinner. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. But let's say I'm not in that context. So the guy who asked the question at the top of the podcast, my brother just came out. What do I do? Well, here are my suspicions. I could be dead wrong on all of this. Number one, because you're a Christian, if he knows you're a Christian, he's automatically going to assume that you don't approve. Mm-hmm. So the surprise will be when you come alongside him and say, dude, I love you no matter what.
Yeah.
You're my brother no matter what. And you don't add a qualifier.
Yep.
There's no qualifier.
Yep.
And then you demonstrate it with your actions over the course of time that you are for him, you are with him, you are committed to him. In my view, that kind of sustained, unrelenting, unqualified love opens people up to the grace and truth of Jesus. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other thought is, my job is never to change anybody. I've tried. I can't even change myself. My job is to represent Jesus well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if what I feel like representing Jesus well means is that I have to let everyone else know about their sin, then you've missed Jesus. Because Jesus was really clear. Anytime someone wanted to point out sin in others, he always directed it back to them. Mm-hmm. So here's the rich young ruler, wealthy guy. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus says, keep the commandments. And then he lists them, but he skips the coveting part. The guy says, dude, I'm in. I've done that my whole life. And he says, okay, well then go sell everything. Give to the poor. And follow me. Jesus doesn't say that to everybody. He doesn't say to everybody, sell everything, give it to the poor, and follow me. Right. But to this guy, who would have been the prime example of blessedness in the first century, Jesus says, nope, that's your deal.
Yeah.
So whenever I am tempted, and I am, to get into these conversations and to make sure that everyone knows my position, because I'm getting that feedback. Well, what do you think? Have you gone liberal?
Yeah.
Have you gone Rob Bell on us? Right? Everyone's got to know. And I just find it interesting that before we do all the warm fuzzy stuff, everyone's got to know what your position is, and then we can do the warm fuzzy stuff. I just think that's bogus.
Yeah,
absolutely think it's bogus.
Yeah.
And that's why when the outside world thinks of the church, at least those under 30, right? What were the statistics that came out of the book Unchristian? Anti-homosexual was number one. Now, let me tell you, listener, if you're okay with that, then you're not following Christ. If you're okay with that, you're not following Jesus. You're doing him harm. I'm not okay with that. And as part of the problem, I want to try to be part of the solution. And that means you front love. You front love. And action, not just in words. So I'm with you. I'm for you. I'm committed to you, regardless of whether or not you ever change. That's the kind of love I show my kids.
Yeah.
And there will be times when you'll see something and go, hey, I mean, my wife and I operate the same way. You know, she told me the other day, I said, man, something just seems off. Something just seems off in you. And I said, I think there's a lot off. But I knew exactly what she meant, and we had a great conversation out of it. But that comes embedded in a web of relationship that we often don't take time to cultivate with those we claim to love, but hate their sin.
Yeah.
Boom. So standard disclaimers apply. Brothers and sisters, we're going to shut this down. I'm going to think of 8,000 things I should have said or said better. We don't manuscript this, obviously. So,
Yeah.
good Lord. And we pray, literally we pray every single time that we represent Jesus well. I mean, that's the goal.
Absolutely.
And we believe part of representing him well is the recognition that he'd call into question my sin first, and then he would call into question all the assumptions on every side of every issue. That no one gets the position of superiority, no one gets the moral high ground when Jesus is involved, and that he'd have words of challenge and grace for every side. So we're trying to do those justice. We love interacting with you. Twitter, Facebook. I have a public page on Facebook too. You can follow Andy on Twitter as well as our producer. And you're on Facebook, right?
Yeah, it's just my personal account. If there's anything, if you wanted to follow me, on Twitter, Andy_Lara, and then on Instagram at Kingdom Artist.
Kingdom Artist.
Yeah.
That sounds voxy.
Yeah, a little bit.
And Lara is spelled Lara.
Yep.
He also administrates my public page and helps out with some other things. So it's wonderful. You can follow us on subversivekingdom.com is kind of where these all get posted first before they go to iTunes. Right. If they're of benefit, would you subscribe? Would you share? Would you like? We've been absolutely overwhelmed by how well received, and I don't mean well received like universally acclaimed. I mean well received, like engaged with.
Yeah. Yep.
That has been absolutely outstanding. We beat Driscoll. We beat Driscoll's podcast.
We beat Driscoll. We're fighting anger with anger. And,
yes.
I think we're coming out on top.
Oh, it makes me so happy.
Yeah, we really do. All the and that's just it. That's what's going to help keep this thing going along is your guys' feedback. You know, letting us know how this is sitting with you, your opinions, your thoughts. I mean, for us, our love for the church, our love for God's people, and our love for Jesus is what we like to expose and break down here, and you know, we're all in this together trying to figure this out.
Yeah, and part of it is we're trying to be a bit provocative. I think Jesus used rabbinic hyperbole. You know, if your right hand causes you to sin, you know, cut it off. I don't see a lot of right hand missing people, so I think we've all sort of, or if your eyes cause you to stumble, you know, poke them out. Well, so every now and again, you know, I think we should state things in an extreme way to budge the whole conversation towards the middle. And the goal is never for you to agree with me. The goal is to read the text. If you've never said yes to this Jesus, read the book of Luke. Just marinate in it. Email us questions about it. Because I think what you'll see is that Jesus is so surprising and that none of us can do him justice. Only himself. So anyway, we'll do our little rabbinic closing. And again, thank you for tuning in. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you and give you peace. Thank you again, and until next time.
Thanks for listening to Vox, the Mike Erre podcast. Be sure to like Mike on Facebook at facebook.com/official Mike Erre. Follow Mike on Twitter and Periscope at Mike Erre for live interaction and ongoing Q&A. Don't forget to visit subversivekingdom.com for further engagement and information about Mike.